Hey, it's Noor for AdTech Unfiltered. Today we're diving into the future of television with Tony Marlow, CMO of LG Ad Solutions. We recorded this live at Cannes Lions, and together we explore what it really means to be in a CTV-first era. Tony breaks down how consumer behavior has evolved since the pandemic, why marketers are rethinking their media plans with screens, and what makes a direct-to-glass strategy a smarter bet in a highly fragmented landscape. We also touch on the surprising return of QR codes, the rise of shoppable TV, and how AI is supercharging everything from ad creative to audience segmentation. Let's get into it. Tony, thanks for joining me this morning.
Hello, good morning. Thank you for having me.
We want to talk about all things LG ads and what's happening in the CTV world. As a person who has recently talked about it being a CTV-first era, I want to hear a little bit more about that. CTV has been around for a while. It's been well over a decade. Why are you calling it that today?
So we've seen a tremendous amount of behavioral change in terms of consumers. So even thinking back to the pandemic, 2020, most countries are following stay-at-home guidance. Most people stay at home. They start watching more television. They start streaming more, extremely more, actually. But what's interesting is for that moment in time, most of this television consumption, most of this streaming consumption was really subscription-based. And think, for example, the original version of Netflix. I pay my fee, I get my content, and there's no ads. Since that moment in time, and we call this the big shift, what's really happened is we've moved from a place where consumers were very clear about saying, I'm happy to pay a fee and get no ads, into acceptance of ad-supported models of streaming. So we've had this shift from linear to streaming, from subscription streaming, now into free ad-supported models. And so this attitudinal change has really set the platform for the CTV-first era. So for the consumer, for many people, certainly under a certain age, if they're saying, I'm going to watch television tonight, they just mean they're going to stream. And because it's the CTV-first world for the consumer, it's starting to become CTV-first for the marketer. Gone are the days where CTV is an afterthought on the media plan. We're starting to hit the point where they're beginning the media plan saying, okay, what does my media buy look like? Because there is this advertising opportunity to now connect with people.
I think the shift in behavior is something that it's much more real today for advertisers than it was in the past, that there was a big disconnect between how excited people were as far as being able to reach people on CTV and the actual types of cultivated inventory that advertisers would want to run across. So well before, let's say, Netflix, people kept talking about them well before there was advertising associated with them, or other big players. We don't have to go through all the names, but the big publishers weren't in the space, but we were talking about it as if they actually were.
And it's easy to forget that before there was advertising with the streaming, there was really only product placement and guerrilla moves like that in order to connect. The marketer was not really involved in that conversation until there's advertising. And what's fascinating is we know that almost everyone in the US, it's over 95% are reachable via connected TV. It's around 80% via free ad-supported versions. And the thing that really blew my mind with some of the research that we do, and we do invest a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of resource into understanding what's going on in the space. Around 7 in 10 American viewers of connected television actually prefer the ad-supported model. That blew my mind. And when we first learned that there's this high level of preference, and it's the preference. It's not just I'm doing it or I'm forcing my way through this model. They actually prefer it. And as we start to head into economic headwinds, that preference is elevating even further.
Do you ever get skepticism from saying something like that? There's then also pushback where people will say, I'd only love an environment if it didn't have ads. I want ads to be skippable. What do you think the rationale is behind why people are actually more open to the ad revenue model?
Well, let's take it back to the 1920s. Actually, I think it was in 1919, Procter, and I may be wrong, I could be off by a year or two, but back approximately then, Procter & Gamble created the first ever radio serial. And they, subsequently known as soap operas. And they would advertise their detergent products. And it was this concept of you're going to get content, you're going to get it for free, and it's made possible because there's advertising. This is a model that many of us, certainly myself, when growing up watching television, this is the model of television that I was familiar with. And so I think what's different now is rather than if you're comparing streaming to linear, I think the reason there's a preference is because in linear, you couldn't target in the same way that we can now. If you were a media buyer, you would, and still do, buy a linear media plan knowing there's an incredible amount of wastage, knowing that your target audience is only a certain percentage of people watching that ad or watching that show. With streaming, you could have the same show with multiple different ad units at the same slot, all targeted to their intended viewer. And I like to say that it's the sight, sound, and motion, that emotional impact that we've always loved about television, but it's the addressability that we love about digital channels, and it's the best of both worlds. And so if you talk about someone being able to get free content, knowing there's going to be advertising, the general perception is it may as well be relevant to me. I do use this example a little bit, but I would say even something as simple as, say you're Nike, if you're going to show me a women's shoe, I'm just literally never going to buy it. You're hitting the wrong audience with this message. Show me a men's shoe, I'm a pretty good chance to pay attention. And that relevance is the key factor, and CTV delivers that well.
I want to ask you about direct-to-glass strategy, specific language that you've used and core to something that you can offer. Not everybody can in the CTV space. Can you just tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. And then, also for any of your listeners who aren't necessarily familiar with LG Ad Solutions, just to tell you a little bit about what we do will help answer the direct-to-glass piece. So we have the footprint of around 200 million LG TVs worldwide. We sell types of advertising on those TVs. So there's basically two broad categories. One, which we call home screen or premium CTV native. Literally, when you turn your LG on, there are opportunities for ads. Often it's in the media entertainment space, but we're also going general market. And then the other type of ad lives within the content. So we have our own fast service, free ad-supported streaming television. It's called LG Channels. In the US, there's over 350 channels. It's all free, it's all streamed, and it's ad-supported. So they're the two basic kind of ways in which we go to market. That's a little reductive, but basically what we do. Now, when you talk about going direct to glass, we talk about going directly to the glass level, to the manufacturer level. You have a lot of marketers out there who have problems when they buy a media plan across, let's say, 10, 15, 20 different over-the-top platforms, so an app on the TV. It's hard to control things like frequency capping, for example. So for a marketer, this is wastage. If I'm over-frequenting someone, I'm paying for impressions that are not doing anything, or worse, maybe a user's seen the same ad 10 times in a row over a very short period of time. It can actually become frustrating for the user. So it could actually have a negative impact. So for the user, it's a bad experience. For the marketer, it's wastage. If you have a direct-to-glass strategy, and this is not a perfect strategy, but none exists yet. If you work with us, work with one other OEM in the television space, you literally have 50% of the TVs in the US. Add a third one in there, you start approaching 3/4. You can start to control for things like frequenting within that glass environment, within that LG environment in our instance. And so you can have much better granularity of control, minimize your wastage. No one's saying there's no wastage. I don't think there's a media plan on earth in any channel where there's zero wastage, but it is much, much more efficient than playing with this fragmented market of different players whose data doesn't talk to one another. So going direct to glass is, I think, one of the best bets for a marketer right now, marketers in CTV.
How do you advise buyers out there who will say, well, you're a part of the equation, but you're not the entire equation, because other people are going to be a part perhaps of a direct to glass, or there's a lot of potential reach that somebody wants to hit. How do you navigate those conversations when you know there are other players that may also need to be a part of the plan?
I think we sit very luckily in the system where our reach is huge. So we were talking about 200 million worldwide, around 45 million televisions in the US. Reach is a really important thing, because without scale, it's hard to really engage with it. And so that whole story of direct to glass reach is a pretty big part of it. In terms of, I think if you were to go in the other direction, I think that's a problem. If you're starting to approach so powerful, you're like a monopoly, and we know other examples in the broader ecosystem, I think that becomes a problem for the user. I think it becomes a problem for the buyer. So knowing that it's in between, really, where there's a small number of these OEM players where no one has too much influence over it, it's a fair marketplace. It's fair for the buyer, it's fair for the user, and it's fair for our business as well. I actually think it's really unique in terms of the equity for all involved.
So follow-up question there. People always want to also ask about the measurement side of things. If you're going to offer this incredible reach and you have this direct to glass opportunity, show me the upside on the back end.
Yeah.
What is some of how you prove that out for people who are committed to buying?
Yeah, we strongly believe in outcomes-based marketing. Typically, we work with almost any third-party measurement company. So let's take ad effectiveness, for example, answering the question, did my campaign work? If you're, for example, a CPG player, you might be interested in brand metrics like, did favorability for my product increase? Did awareness, did intent to buy, did that increase? We use independent third parties to measure things like that. If you're further down the funnel, maybe you're interested in direct response metrics like, did someone click through and configure a vehicle, or did they book a test drive? And all of those things are also measurable. In fact, while we do have a richness of data, of our first-party data, for ad effectiveness, we basically just allow third parties to independently measure it. I would say really the only exception is sometimes for view-through. So if you're, for example, advertising a television show and you want to see did people actually watch it more because they saw the ad, often our clients will prefer to use our own ACR data, automatic content recognition, or they could use third-party. That's probably the exception. Almost in any other circumstance, it is independently verified. The marketer knows how much bang for my proverbial buck did I get? What do I dial up? What do I dial down? Were there portions of my campaign that worked harder than others? And we are very data-led in that way. We believe that marketers should behave in that way.
Tony, I'll have us swing back to the FAST piece. You had mentioned FAST being an important opportunity with you all. What's separating the way that you're approaching it versus other players in the space?
It can be simple and it can be complicated. So, for example, just rewind recently to New Fronts. We were featuring 50 Cent and the 50 Cent Action Channel. And it's actually kind of cool. It's so literally 50 Cent has curated these action movies that he just likes, and it's a whole channel of these action movies. And I think when you talk about great content like that, I'm going to go watch a Hollywood blockbuster action movie that a famous person I like enjoys. It aggregates people who are passionate about that, and then there's advertising that's associated with it. So the marketer can be involved in that conversation as well. This is the model. This is free ad-supported streaming television. Great content drives great engagement, it drives the eyeballs, and it provides an opportunity for the marketer to connect. Versus SVOD, so subscription video on demand, it's a different proposition. I actually think we're at a moment in time where the consumer has more choice than ever before. They can go the SVOD route and say, I will pay a fee and I'm not going to get ads, and great. Or they can say, I'm going to watch some free content, there's going to be ads, and then there's obviously an in-between model where it's subsidized in ads. But what's interesting is there's a mix. What we're finding is, particularly as economic concerns increase, people are starting to engage in behaviors like subscription cycling, meaning rather than having, say, 8 subscriptions active at a given moment in time, maybe now I'm a little concerned about the cost of this. And, there's a notion of streamflation, the increasing cost of all of these streaming services. So what we're observing is people are reducing the number that are active in a given moment in time, and they're cycling through it. It's around 2/3 of people are subscription cycling, meaning they'll watch the content they want, cancel the subscription, move on to the next one. And then what they're also doing is supplementing with the free streaming usage as well. So getting a full picture of all the content they want in the way that they want it. And so I love that we're at a moment where you can just choose your path. You could be all free, you could be all subscription, or you could have a tapestry, as most people do.
As the advertising players become more sophisticated, consumers are becoming more sophisticated. So there's a constant back and forth there. And I think my observation just as a consumer is that FAST has just vastly improved overall. I think there was a lot of emotion around I don't consume FAST before. I always would poll people and say, do you consume something that is FAST? And oh no, I don't do that. I pay for everything. And now that is a behavior that is shifting in a massive way as more and more also quality content is available in FAST spaces as well. I want to ask you a question also about ad formats, one of them being shoppable units. You have this glass-focused opportunity from a manufacturer standpoint. People have polarized feelings about these types of units because ultimately you want to consume this long-form linear content in many cases, and wanting to go in deep and start clicking around and shopping for stuff isn't always the ideal for everyone. How would you approach those conversations when talking about the viability of shoppable ads?
I'm really interested in this, actually, because there's so many pieces to it. So you and I are here talking 2025 Lions. I think 2024 in many ways was the year of the shoppable unit. What was interesting about then, you could almost also recall it the resurgence of the QR code. So you would see these ad units on television and there would be a call to action, a QR code, the user would lift their mobile, and then it would bring that experience from the big screen on the wall into the glass in their hand. And you could convert, you could do more, you could take that next step. And in 2024, that's where that shifted. And think about it, something like a QR code, that is not new technology. That has been around for a while. So it's not that the technology changed, it's that consumer attitudes did. Something happened, and some people cite the pandemic actually as openness to QR codes, and they were on menus in restaurants and just people's familiarity. But for whatever reason, people started saying, look, I'm really open to clicking a QR code and then making a purchase on my mobile. And I think that really opened the shoppable experience wide open. And here in 2025, we're in an opportunity where it's starting to evolve beyond the QR code. And we've seen examples. So Amazon in the US with some of their football games, for example, I'm not sure if you've watched any of it, they've created these more seamless shoppable experiences where click a button on your remote and you could add something to your cart, or you can get emailed directly about a service or offer on an ad. And then even for us, we announced at our last WebOS summit, WebOS being our operating system on all modern LG TVs, that we're rolling out something called WebOS Pay. So once you start to be able to quickly pay for and have things delivered or configured on your television, people's propensity to want to buy either on the big screen or on the screen in their hand is just increasing. We're used to buying on our mobile. We're used to buying in certain scenarios, but it means that the retail shoppable scenario is almost everywhere now. And I'll go back to what I was saying earlier. Even though the technology is starting to make it more frictionless, I believe it's more a behavioral shift. It's people's willingness to do this that's driving it. It's not the technology, even though the technology is an enabling factor.
As far as just looking into the future, there's so much momentum behind CTV. If you had a few final words for anybody who's trying to think about CTV differently, what would that be?
Maybe this is a little bit of an eye roller, but given that it's just such a buzzword, but I think artificial intelligence for connected television and for other things, it's rapidly changing almost everything. And same for CTV. So the ability to make beautiful, effective, creative, the ads themselves super quickly, but also a large volume of them. It used to be you would A/B test maybe 1, 2, or 3 kind of units. You can now literally create hundreds, if not thousands of ad units using AI, test them and see which ones work. So the ability to get from a creative idea to great effectiveness really quickly has transformed. We use AI with our clients right now. A lot of them will come to us and say, we have this existing campaign. We're going across all of these different media. We would love to buy your home screen units, but they're not IAB standard. We use AI to make it fit the canvas itself. It's incredible. And so in the design process, I think AI is transforming CTV from that creative side of things. And then I think what you'll hear a little more about, and we've had a few recent announcements, we're starting to engage on this side as well, but I think also on the audience side. So think about AI-fueled segmentation for the marketer, where we used to do really simple age demo kind of targeting. We can go way more granular than that now. Like, why is it that my ad only appeals to women aged, X to Y? AI can create cohorts of individuals that maybe the human mind doesn't even understand what makes them cohesive, and deliver the right creative to every single one of those people. And I think we're starting to hit that era. And so I think that agentic AI is going to be the buzzword of this Cannes Lions, meaning these AI agents for creating creatives, these AI agents for creating segments. This is what's going to start being spoken about. And I think it's true for connected TV. It's going to be true for digital. It's transforming at a pace that I don't think we're prepared for.
Yeah, the speed, the potential for innovation and creativity is unlike what we've seen in the past, and just the accessibility is fantastic as well. So we're excited to see what shakes out next for you all, and we'll be watching. Thanks for the time, Tony.
Well, thank you for having me, and I hope you have a successful Cannes Lions.
A big thank you to Tony Marlow, CMO of LG Ad Solutions, for joining us and bringing perspective on the interesting and desirable places that connected TV is headed. The point about consumers going beyond tolerating ads to now opting in when the content is right and the value is clear is something every advertiser wants to hear. And for marketers, that means new opportunities to deliver more relevant, more measurable campaigns at scale. Thanks for listening. I'm Noor Naseer. More AdTech Unfiltered coming up soon.